I've been a teacher for 11 years, and I've learned that silence can tell louder truths than words. That afternoon, it was screaming. We were seated around my in-laws' long oak table in Ballard, Seattle. The afternoon light from the window caught the silverware, bouncing tiny reflections across Lorraine's wedding china. My mother-in-law's smile was so bright it could have been rehearsed. My brother-in-law, Ethan, stirred his mashed potatoes with his fork like a man trying to delay a confession. My husband, Michael, sat across from me, eating as though nothing was wrong. I was halfway through my salad when my phone buzzed quietly in my lap. The screen lit up with an unknown number and a message that changed everything. Don't react. They're recording you. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I forced a small smile and reached for my glass. The advice was clear, don't react. So I didn't. I nodded at Lorraine as she asked if I'd graded all my essays yet. I even laughed when Ethan teased me about being too emotional over fiction books. He had no idea that at that moment, I was memorizing every face, every glance, every strange silence. After lunch, I excused myself to use the bathroom. The hallway smelled faintly of lemon cleaner. I checked the vent, the light switch, and the framed photo of the family at the beach. Nothing. I returned to the table, smiled again, and thanked Lorraine for the meal. Inside, I was replaying the text again and again. They're recording you. That night, after tucking my 5-year-old daughter, Clara, into bed, I stood in the kitchen of our bungalow near Green Lake. The place was my pride, small, warm, with the soft creaks of old wood floors and the faint smell of jasmine tea that lingered from evenings past. I'd bought it years before marrying Michael, using my teacher's loan and the $60,000 my grandmother had left me. Every picture on the wall told a story I'd lived honestly. It felt impossible that any part of this home could be turned against me. Still, I needed to check. I started with the smoke detector in the hallway. The plastic cover looked off, too new for a device that came with the house. When I twisted it open, a tiny camera lens stared back at me. My breath caught in my throat. I climbed onto a chair in the nursery next and inspected the bookshelf behind Clara's storybooks. Another one. Then the carbon monoxide detector near the dining area. A third. Each one carried a small memory card, barely the size of my thumbnail. I sat down on the couch, shaking. My hands felt foreign, detached, like they belonged to someone else. Who would do this? Michael? Lorraine? Some stranger? The text message had been right, but who sent it? When Michael finally came home, it was almost 10. He smelled like beer and faint perfume. He kissed Clara's forehead goodnight, then leaned toward me, his eyes glossy. Long day, he said casually. Yeah, I replied, keeping my voice calm. Long day. I smiled, pretending nothing was wrong, and waited for him to fall asleep. Once the house was quiet, I gathered the memory cards, slipped them into a small box, and labeled it with blue painter's tape. House, cameras, do not erase. Then I copied everything onto a portable drive I'd bought months ago for lesson plans. When I finally watched the first clip, my breath froze. The footage showed me standing in the nursery, holding Clara. But something was off. The audio was distorted, and the lighting was weirdly dim. In the real moment, I remembered softly humming to her. But in this version, my hum was gone, replaced by silence and a faint thud that made it look like I'd slammed something. I opened another file. It showed me folding laundry in the living room. In the edited version, my sigh, a tired, ordinary sigh, was cut right before a voice muttered, "You're impossible." My lips didn't even move. Someone had spliced the footage to make it seem like I'd said something cruel. By the 10th clip, I understood the pattern. Every edit was designed to make me look angry, unstable, even dangerous. It wasn't random. This was preparation. Someone was building a narrative, one that could be shown to a judge or a lawyer to make me lose everything that mattered. Clara and my home. I didn't cry. I've seen enough teenage dramas in my classroom to know that crying wastes time. Instead, I wrote down every file name, timestamp, and device. I backed up each one twice. I made a folder on my laptop titled Evidence and another on the portable drive labeled Originals. The next morning, before work, I called a digital forensics lab in Queen, and I told them I suspected hidden cameras and video tampering. The man on the phone quoted $3,200 for analysis. My stomach turned. That was nearly my monthly paycheck after taxes. But I transferred $5,000 from my savings anyway. Then I called a family lawyer in Belltown named Alicia Moreno, a name I'd seen on a teachers' association forum. Her retainer was $7,500. When she picked up, her voice was steady, calm. I explained everything, the cameras, the text, the edited footage. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she said, "You're not imagining this. Bring me copies. And stay calm." "I can imitate calm," I said. She chuckled softly. "Then do that. We'll handle the rest." That afternoon, while my students read quietly, my phone buzzed again. The same unknown number. "Back up everything. Look at the doorbell chime. You don't deserve this." When I got home, I went straight to the entryway. The chime cover was shaped like a sunburst, one I'd thought was decorative. I pried it open with a butter knife, and there it was. Another tiny camera. The memory card inside was labeled with that very day's date. The front door creaked open. Michael stood there, his eyebrows raised. "What are you doing?" I forced a smile and lowered the cover back into place. "Cleaning," I said softly. He looked confused. "Cleaning what?" I glanced at the wall, at the photos of Clara, at the life we had built, and at the small, hidden eye that had watched it all. Then I met his gaze, my voice steady. "It's nice," I said, "to keep a house tidy." He smiled, not understanding that the game had already changed, and that I had just found the first proof of a war he didn't know I was ready to fight. For the next 8 days, my life became a quiet war fought behind closed doors. The house that once felt safe now breathed like an enemy, every creak and hum holding secrets I hadn't heard before. I walked through each room as if stepping on thin glass, cataloging everything, every angle, every reflection, every possible hiding place. My classroom at Roosevelt Middle still needed me to show up smiling, teaching about metaphors and irony while living inside one. After school each day, I came home, locked the doors, and worked like a librarian inside a police procedural. I labeled folders, numbered clips, and filled a green composition notebook with times, dates, and notes about each device. I learned to hold the camera's gaze without showing fear. I installed 2 visible nanny cams of my own that streamed directly to a cloud account. I made a new rule for myself. If I was in the frame, I smiled. No matter what was happening, I kept my hands visible and my tone calm. I refused to give anyone fresh footage to twist. Alicia, my lawyer, was moving fast. She filed for a temporary restraining order that prevented Michael from selling or refinancing the house without my consent. She also prepared an emergency custody order to protect Clara's schedule and prevent anyone from removing her from school. Filing fees, process servers, and Alicia's hours drained $2,150 within 48 hours. I kept the receipts clipped neatly inside a folder labeled Legal, Phase 1. I also agreed to take extra grading for a colleague on maternity leave, which earned me a $600 stipend. It wasn't much, but every dollar mattered now. The forensics lab emailed me their initial report on day 6. The technician, a quiet man named Victor, had reviewed the memory cards and sent side-by-side images. On the left were my originals, normal lighting, unbroken time codes, consistent sound. On the right, the edited versions, jumps in frames, unnatural silence, spikes in sound levels that no home should have. The report came with a sworn statement confirming tampering and digital alteration. It cost $3,200, and it was worth every cent. Still, one question burned through me. Who sent the text that started it all? The messages had been a lifeline, but they came from a block number and left no trail. Every time I heard my phone buzz, I felt both relief and dread. On the 9th day, I finally got my answer. Naomi, my sister-in-law, texted me to meet her at a cafe in Fremont. She was married to Ethan, and she'd always been the quiet one in the family, the nurse who worked long night shifts and rarely joined family dinners. When I arrived, she was already seated in a corner booth, still in her navy scrubs, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. She didn't order coffee. "You didn't hear this from me," she whispered, sliding her phone across the table. The screen showed an email chain. The sender line made my stomach twist. Lorraine Shaw, my mother-in-law. She had written to someone named Tom O'Brien, a private investigator in Tacoma. Her message read, "We need clear evidence of emotional instability for the court. Nothing illegal. Just documentation that will persuade a judge. Discretion is critical." Michael had replied directly below it. "Recording schedule attached. Focus on evenings when she's tired. She says strange things when she's stressed." Naomi scrolled further, revealing another reply from Ethan. "Installed the nursery cam after our hardware store run. She didn't notice. Got the placement right above the storybook shelf." My throat went dry. I remembered that night clearly. Ethan had returned from the store with a lemon tree for the patio, smiling like he'd done something kind. The camera must have been in his bag, too. Naomi kept scrolling. "It gets worse," she said quietly. The next thread included a new name, Kira. I knew her instantly. She was one of Michael's college friends, recently divorced and suddenly appearing at trivia nights with our group. The emails between Michael and Kira were about future transitions and property restructuring. They planned to list my house, a house I bought before marrying him, with a fast cash buyer for $520,000, nearly $250,000 under its real value. In the plan, I was described as a temporary occupant who would soon be relocated for her mental health and safety. Naomi's hands shook as she set the phone down. "I told Ethan this was criminal," she whispered. "He said it's not my business. But it is." I asked her if she was the one who had sent the warning texts. She hesitated, then nodded. "You didn't deserve it," she said. "I couldn't let them ruin you." Tears stung my eyes. I reached across the table and took her hand. "You saved me." She shook her head. "No." I just slowed them down. "Be careful, okay? If you react too fast, they'll twist it again. Make you look hysterical." That night, I didn't sleep much. I built a blanket fort with Clara in the living room, pretending we were camping. She giggled and shone her flashlight at the ceiling, telling me ghost stories she barely remembered. When she drifted off, I tucked the forensics report, Naomi's screenshots, and the memory cards into a banker's box. I slid it under my bed like a buried promise. The next morning, Alicia called. Her voice carried both calm and calculation. "We're not going to confront them yet," she said. "We'll let them feel safe. Then we'll make our move where they can't hide." "How?" I asked. "At the next family dinner," she replied. "You'll act normal. I'll come as your friend. Once they're relaxed, we serve him the court orders and show selected clips, original beside edited. It'll hit like a hammer in front of witnesses." I stayed silent, imagining Lorraine's face cracking at the edges, Ethan's smug calm collapsing. Alicia continued. "After that, we'll need a second strike. People like Michael always have backups. There's usually another angle, someone else involved, another plan. They'll try to save face. When they do, we'll already be there." "What kind of place?" I asked. "A public one," she said. "Somewhere they'll try to show off their success. Maybe a school fundraiser, a local business event, something they can't resist attending." She paused. "People who plot in secret love public applause. That's where they fall." I looked around the quiet house. The baby monitor light blinked softly, harmless now. My reflection in the window didn't look like a scared woman anymore. It looked like someone preparing for battle. "Okay," I whispered. "Let's end this the right way." That night, I set my phone on the kitchen counter, turned on every light, and smiled faintly at the nearest hidden camera. If they were still watching, they would see exactly what I wanted them to see, a woman who wasn't broken, just patient. Lorraine insisted that Sunday dinners were sacred traditions. So when she called and asked if I could bring dessert, I understood the meaning behind her invitation. It wasn't hospitality, it was a stage. Still, I agreed. Alicia said it was the perfect opportunity to act naturally and let the truth do its work. I spent the morning baking a lemon tart, the same kind Lorraine once praised as too sweet but decent for a teacher. I packed it carefully and drove to Shoreline with my pulse drumming against the steering wheel. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked the same: white siding, trimmed hedges, too many wind chimes. But something in the air felt different, heavier, as if the walls knew what was about to happen. Alicia arrived minutes later, dressed in a slate-gray dress and carrying her small leather folder. She was coming as my friend, though I think even Lorraine's sharp eyes couldn't imagine how dangerous this friend really was. Inside, the table was already set. Roast beef steamed on a silver platter, the smell of garlic and rosemary thick in the air. Lorraine smiled tightly when she saw me. "You look tired, dear," she said. "Are you taking your vitamins?" "I'm fine," I said, placing the tart on the counter. "Just busy grading papers." Michael leaned in and kissed my cheek, whispering, "Let's try to have a calm night, okay?" I looked at the carving knife in his hand and decided I'd prefer to talk to a judge instead. We all sat down. Ethan poured wine, his expression unreadable. Naomi arrived a few minutes late, deliberately, to signal that everything was safe and ready. I caught her eye across the table. She gave a small nod. The dinner started stiffly. Lorraine talked about the weather. Ethan complained about work. I smiled when appropriate and made mental notes of every nervous glance Michael threw toward the TV in the living room. Finally, after plates were cleared and coffee poured, Alicia stood. "I brought something to show everyone," she said pleasantly. "A little family project." Lorraine frowned. "A project?" Alicia connected a small drive to the television and pressed play. The screen is filled with 2 side-by-side videos. On the left, the original footage from my nursery camera. On the right, the edited version, the one they'd crafted to ruin me. In the original, I was humming softly while folding Clara's tiny sweaters. On the edited side, the hum was gone, replaced by an exaggerated thud that made it seem like I'd thrown the hanger. The manipulation was subtle but malicious, designed to twist every act of care into anger. Lorraine's face went pale. Ethan's hand froze midair, holding his cup. The second clip began, another split screen. On the left, I said casually, "I need to make a grocery list." On the right, my mouth moved the same way, but a low voice said, "I need to make her pay." The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. The air felt electric, charged with disbelief and guilt. Michael stood abruptly. "This is nonsense. These files are fake." Alicia didn't flinch. "They were analyzed by a certified forensic lab," she said calmly. "You're welcome to challenge our findings, but that would require sworn statements, and you know how perjury works." Lorraine slammed her napkin onto the table. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Then perhaps you can explain this," I said softly. I handed Naomi the printed emails, and she slid them across the table to her mother. Lorraine's trembling fingers unfolded the first page. She started reading aloud before she realized what she was doing. "The daughter-in-law has a fragile effect. We will collect evidence to persuade a judge to shift custody. Tom, please keep it clean. I want nothing traced to my house." The sound of her own words filled the room. Ethan's eyes darted toward Naomi, but she didn't look away. Alicia reached into her folder and pulled out a manila envelope. "These are temporary court orders," she said, placing them in front of Michael. "You're now prohibited from entering or selling any property owned jointly or separately with my client. You're also barred from removing the child from school or the state. Officers will collect all surveillance devices tomorrow morning under a warrant." Lorraine's voice cracked. "This is outrageous." "No," Alicia said evenly. "This is evidence." Michael's face turned red. "You're making a mistake," he muttered. "I think you already made it," I replied, my voice steady. The rest of the evening dissolved into chaos. Lorraine shouting, Ethan demanding to see proof, Michael pacing like a trapped animal. I remained still, my hands folded neatly on my lap. Naomi touched my shoulder once, gently, like a silent apology for all the things she hadn't known how to stop. 2 days later, Alicia called me to say there was more. She discovered that Michael and Kira were scheduled to appear at a neighborhood business mixer on Capitol Hill. The topic? Real estate investment opportunities. Their presentation listed a distressed property with strong resale potential. The photos matched my house. "This is your curtain," Alicia said. "Bring your drives." The event was held in a small modern hall with white lights and an oversized screen. Investors mingled with cocktails in hand. I wore a navy dress and carried my evidence like a stack of graded papers. When Michael walked on stage with Kira and another man named Patrick Doyle, I almost didn't recognize him. His voice was slick, confident, rehearsed. Behind him, a slide appeared showing my bungalow bathed in golden light with a caption, "Beautiful home priced for speed." Patrick began explaining the purchase agreement, a deal that would close in 10 days for $520,000. He called it a win-win for all parties. The crowd nodded, polite and eager. Then Alicia raised her hand from the audience. "Can you clarify whether the current owner has consented to this sale?" Patrick hesitated. "The owner is, well, not in a position to manage her affairs properly. We have documentation." "Do you mean the manipulated footage you used to fabricate instability?" Alicia asked. "Or the originals, which show a calm mother taking care of her child?" The room murmured. The MC stuttered. Michael's jaw tightened. Alicia gestured to the screen. "We'd like to show a 2-minute comparison." The MC nodded nervously. The clips began to play. The same nursery scene, the same falsified audio, now blown up on a giant screen. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A woman near the front whispered, "That's not an edit. That's a cut." At that moment, a detective from the Seattle Police Department's Special Assault Unit stepped forward. Alicia had invited him quietly, just in case. When she displayed the printed emails, the ones proving intent and planning, he moved toward the stage. Patrick stumbled backward. Kira tried to slip out the side door, but found another officer waiting. Michael said nothing. He just stared at the carpet, hands trembling. I didn't feel victory. I felt air, simple, unremarkable air, filling my lungs for the first time in weeks. On the screen, my home glowed softly, not as a weapon, but as what it always was, a place where my daughter slept safely, waiting for her mother to come home. The days that followed felt like walking on stepping stones after a storm, each one small, deliberate, and important. The chaos had ended, but the silence that replaced it was louder than any shouting. For the first time in months, I woke to sunlight through the curtains instead of the red blink of hidden lenses. Officers came early Monday morning to collect the devices. They moved through my house like surgeons, careful and methodical. They found 6 cameras in total, 1 in the doorbell chime, another tucked behind a vent, and 4 in places I would have never guessed. When the detective lifted the final camera from behind the air return, he looked at me with something like pity. "You did everything right," he said softly. "Most people never catch this early." The forensics report later confirmed what we already knew. Michael's fingerprints were on a micro SD case hidden in the attic crawlspace. Ethan's hardware purchases matched 3 of the devices. Tom O'Brien, the so-called private investigator Lorraine hired, was arrested for stalking and unlawful surveillance. Kira and Patrick faced charges for conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. And Lorraine, sharp, social, untouchable Lorraine, was officially named as a co-conspirator. The emails she wrote about collecting evidence and persuading a judge sealed her fate. The day of the hearing was long and cold, but I remember every word. The courtroom smelled faintly of paper and old carpet. Alicia stood tall beside me, calm as ever. Across the aisle, Michael sat with his lawyer, pale and defeated. Lorraine avoided my eyes completely. The judge reviewed everything: the forensics report, the comparison clips, and Naomi's testimony. My sister-in-law spoke softly, her voice breaking when she described Clara humming the same lullaby that had been edited out of the fake footage. By the time the gavel struck, my world had started to rebuild itself. The judge granted me sole decision-making rights for Clara for the next year, along with primary custody in my home. Michael was given supervised visitation twice a week at a neutral family center. He was ordered to attend counseling and pay $850 a month in temporary child support. The fraudulent sale contract was voided entirely, declared a product of deception and manipulation. My title, the one I'd worked and saved for, remained clean and wholly mine. After the ruling, I stood outside the courthouse steps under a gray Seattle sky. I should have felt triumphant, but what I felt was simpler relief. The kind that doesn't come with cheers, just deep breaths and unclenched hands. Alicia hugged me before she left. "You fought smart," she said. That's rarer than fighting hard. Back at school, my coworkers rallied around me in quiet, generous ways. The PTA president, David, an accountant with an easy smile, helped me go through my credit reports to make sure nothing had been tampered with. One of my neighbors, Matt, who installs security systems, replaced my old locks and set up a secure network of cameras that belonged only to me. He refused payment at first, but I insisted and handed him $900 in cash. He only accepted after I said it was for Clara's safety, not mine. That weekend, I bought a small safe from a hardware store, $179 before tax. I placed our passports, the drives, and a few important papers inside. The door sensor I installed now chimed a soft, cheerful tone every time someone entered. Clara laughed each time it sounded. To her, it was just a friendly song that meant home was safe again. The news traveled fast in our little community. Lorraine lost her volunteer board position at the local charity foundation. Ethan received an official reprimand from his company for misusing work hours to assist in illegal activity. Kira's brokerage license was suspended indefinitely. Patrick's name vanished from his firm's website. Tom O'Brien's business disappeared from the internet within days. Justice doesn't always roar. It sometimes just erases. Still, I knew I needed distance. The house, though finally safe, carried too many ghosts. So, I decided to move Clara and me to a small townhouse in Edmonds, north of the city. It wasn't grand, but it was peaceful, with a sliver of a water view if you stood on the bed and tilted your head just right. The rent was $2,400 a month. I kept the old bungalow under a new trust Alicia helped me establish to prevent any future schemes or accidental sales. I hired a property manager for $140 monthly. Within a few weeks, a young family moved in, paying $3,350 in rent. Every time the payment hit my account, I didn't think of profit, I thought of freedom. That house had once been my battleground, and now it was my safety net. The math was clean. The feeling was complicated. On our first weekend in Edmonds, Clara and I explored the neighborhood library's book sale. She chose a picture book about a lighthouse and a brave child who kept its lamp lit through the storm. That night, she curled beside me on the couch while I drank peppermint tea and watched her draw. Later, after she went to bed, I opened my green composition book, the same one I used for evidence notes, and wrote 3 new lines. I kept the originals. I told the truth in the right room. We're safe. I stared at those words until the letters blurred. Safety isn't a single moment, I realized. It's not a locked door or a verdict. It's the quiet that follows, the slow trust you rebuild with yourself when no one's watching. I turn off the porch light at night now, not out of fear, but because I know who controls the switch. Naomi visits sometimes. She and Ethan are no longer together. We talk about Clara, about work, about normal things. Alicia still checks in every few weeks, though now it's just to send memes or photos of her new dog. Life is lighter again. Michael attends his court-ordered therapy. I get updates through legal channels, not curiosity. The detectives are still following a few leads. Apparently, the network behind Tom O'Brien's investigation firm might stretch further than we thought. That part still hurts, knowing others watched me without ever meeting me. So I try not to linger on it. Every night, before bed, I check the door sensors and the cameras, the ones that belong to me, the ones I control. I brush my teeth, hum the lullaby Clara loves, and whisper it softly to myself because even grown women deserve songs of safety. When I tuck her in, she always asks, "Mom, are we home now?" "Yes," I say, pulling the blanket to her chin. "We're home." And we are. We live in the quiet now on a calm street, in a modest house with a sturdy lock and a view of the water. We keep records, we keep faith, and we keep singing. We will never explain our peace to those who try to take it.